but one of the things you practically did during that shift from burnout to like, hey, it is chaos. I am a
hmm
dad. There are 4 boys throwing stuff. So, how did you find some peace in the habits of your household?
Yeah, and you just said some really interesting and important stuff on mental health and that. So I'm going to weave in an answer there.
Yeah, perfect.
The first thing that I realized was that I actually did need to be attentive to my body and my mental health, because if I was collapsing in anxiety crashes, then I wasn't going to be able to serve and love my family. And this problem was both physical and spiritual, and both needed to be addressed. So that was confusing to me at the time, because I thought any physical problem is really just an upstream spiritual problem, and if I fix my worldview and my thoughts,
Yep.
then it'll all trickle down and I'll be okay in my
Yep.
body.
Yep.
And I now see that's a way of ignoring the fact that God made you to be an embodied person, and that you can have problems in the brain and in your health, or in your physical habits. Like, it's if you're eating and sleeping and or drinking, or or even more extreme, like using substances in certain ways. If you're looking at things on the internet, scrolling all day, these have significant physical ramifications that then become spiritual realities, and vice versa, right? If you're
Right, right.
believing wrong things or believing lies, those become physical issues. So one of the claims in The Body Teaches the Soul is that everything spiritual is always becoming physical, and everything physical is always becoming spiritual. So we don't really
Yeah.
do ourselves any favor when we try to split the two. And so now, I wouldn't have said all this perfectly at the time. I was very confused at what was happening at the
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
But it was in the long run, Courtney, in retrospect, where I realized attending to all of those holistically is what really started to help me. So some of the habits were things like scripture before phone, where I was both saying I need to be in the Word as a regular matter, not just in my emails or Twitter or the news first thing in the morning. And that seems like obvious advice, to be in the Word, but sometimes it's so obvious that we cease to listen to it, right?
Right, right.
And there was so much other content coming at me through my phone in the morning that it was creating mental unhealth just at the beginning of the day. So you could think of that as a devotional habit. Scripture before phone became really
Which is
important to
a
me.
need to versus have to, right? So for years, you're like, I'm a good Christian person. Let me get
That's
my
a good
quiet
way to
time
put it.
out. You know what I mean? Like, I think you're going, I don't function well without it if I don't do it in this order.
That is a great way to put it. It was a point where I realized, sure, I am supposed to, but I
Right.
actually must do this.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'm going to crumble. I'm going to feel bad. It was, you know, John Piper was famous for sort of making Christian hedonism a concept. And it's that idea of where I am the fullest when I am in line with who God made me to be in his word. Or this is Augustine's words, right? My soul is restless until it finds rest in thee. So
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
was a turning point in my life where I said, I'm actually going to be happier if I keep my phone off in the morning and I'm spending time in the Word. So there's a pillar of devotional habits there, right?
Yeah.
There's a second sort of column, if you will, of parenting rhythms, where I started to think about, and this is the Habits of the Household book, where I started to think about finding norms with my kids that would be healthier for them and me.
Mm.
Bedtime liturgies was a huge thing here. Like, we were all typically melting down at bedtime, my behavior included. So finding ways to either tickle them to bed, like we would do a tickle blessing, or give them a back and forth prayer blessing. And it wasn't like it made bedtime easy, but it was ways that I started to realize these messy moments can be spiritually rich moments as we go back and forth in certain patterns. And that was just the wisdom of spiritual habit too, realizing that there are these up vertical habits like scripture before phone with God. And then there are these sort of horizontal habits with my
Hmm.
household where I could find ordinary messy moments of the day and enter into really significant spiritual moments with my kids that were helping me as much as them, calm
Yeah,
down, right? And so
absolutely.
that was a big deal. And so for me, in my anxiety, I started to realize that the way that I was chronically minimizing sleep, the
Mm.
way that I was not attending to what I ate at all. I mean, my eating was just governed by my work schedule. So it was always
Right.
sort of like
Yeah.
an afterthought, and often skipping meals and then eating really unhealthy food and a lot of it.
Same, same, same.
And the way that I did not exercise at all. So by neglecting my God given need for rest, by neglecting this God given blessing of food and nourishing our bodies. And then by neglecting, um, honoring God in my health,